Hello everyone, welcome to Sangeeta Shirsat channel. Today we are diving into an important concept in C++ programming. So let's get started. Before we jump into the details, let's quickly recall what is a variable. A variable is a container that holds data in memory, but not all the variables are same. We have three main types of variables: local variable, instance variable, and static variables. So a static variable is a variable that is shared among all the objects of the class rather than being unique to each object. What does this mean? So in this image you can see I have a variable count, which is a static variable, and this static variable is being shared by the object A, object B, and object C. We don't have to create any separate static variable for each object. Static variable 1, static variable 2, static variable 3. This is not allowed. The static variable will be shared by all the objects. We are not creating any separate static variable for each object. Okay. Whether you have one object, two objects, or any number of objects in a class, static variable will remain only one. Only one copy of static variable will be there, which will be shared by all the objects of that particular class. Instance variable, static variable, and local variable. We have these three main types of variable, right? So in this image we have all these three types of variables. Now each object will have its own copy of instance variable, whereas for static variable we have only one copy, as we have discussed earlier, right? Static variable will have only one copy for all the object, where in case with instance variable each object will have its own copy. In this, sharing is not taking place. Each object will have its unique instance variable. So the changes made in the instance variable using one object will not get reflected to another object, as because each object have its own instance variable. So if I am making any changes to this particular instance variable, it will not get reflected to this. If I am making the changes in this instance variable, it not get reflected to this third instance variable. Okay, as because each object is having its own unique instance variable, where in case with static variable, if any changes made to the static variable using object 1 will get reflected to the other object, Okay. Now, where in case with local variables are specific to a function or a method. As you can say in this image, C is a local variable. So I am using that particular C variable only within the scope of that particular function. I cannot use this variable C outside this function. That is what a local variable is. So we'll just see the code, how all these three variables are used. Now in this I have a class test with static variable, static var. This is the syntax of static variable, defining a variable as static. I have an instance variable which I have initialized to 0, explicitly initialized to 0. Then I have a function show variable in which I have a variable local variable. So local variables are function specific. They are not called as class variables. Now in this code, in this particular function, I am incrementing the value of all these three variables, and with the help of the cout statement I am printing the data. Now one important thing to remember here is when I am using when I am using static variable, I need to define and initialize it outside the class. Outside the class means outside this curly bracket and semicolon. That is the rule. So for defining it, I need to write the name of class, scope resolution operator, name of static variable equal to 0. Okay. Now I need to call this function show variable using object, right? So I have two objects, object 1 and object 2. Now I can call the instance variable directly with the help of object, but we cannot call static variables using object. That is the second rule. The first rule is I need to redefine or I need to reinitialize static variable outside the class. The second rule is I cannot use object to call static variable. Instead, I will use class name, scope resolution operator and the variable static variable name for accessing the value of static variable. So in this void main, I have created object 1, object 2. With the help of object 1, I am calling this show variable. This show variable will go in this function definition, and local variable is 0. Now it will get incremented to 1. Instance variable is also 0. It will be changed to 1, and static variable will be 1. Now that is for object 1. Now for object 2, again we are calling the same function. So local variable I am initializing it to 0. So again it will remain 1. It will not get 2. Instance variable will become 1. Static variable will become 2. Okay. Now again if I am calling show variable with the same object, object 1. Okay. Then local variable will become 1. Instance variable will become 2. Static variable will become 3. As because all the two objects will share static variables, so the value will get changed. Okay. And for this local variable, it is function specific. It will be reset to 1 every time when we are calling this particular show variable. Okay. Now let's see the output. So this is the output. Accessing values directly in main. Instance variable is 2 for object 1. Static variable is 3. Okay. Now for calling, if I am trying to access local variable outside the class, as I have told, local variable is function specific. So you can see this error. Local variable was not declared in the scope, right? So it is function specific. Where in case with this static variable, I cannot use object to call static variable. Yes, to summarize, we have static variable, the lifetime of static variable is for the entire program, as because static variable are shared by all the objects. It is initialized when the class is loaded. It is initialized to 0, right? Instance variable for the lifetime of the object. If object is there, instance variable will be there. Initialized when the object is created. Local variables, the lifetime of local variable is specific to the particular function or a method or a block of code. We cannot use local variable outside any function method. Okay, it can be initialized to 0, or we can give any value to a local variable explicitly before we are using it in a particular function. So that's all for today. Thank you.